On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1973. We're going to be taking a look at Seals and Crofts, and they're going to be performing Summer Breeze. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, let's get these guys up on screen and see how they get on.
See the curtains hanging in the window in the evening on a Friday night. Little light is shining through the window, lets me know everything's alright. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, flowing through the jasmine in my mind. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, flowing through the jasmine in my mind. See the paper laying on the sidewalk, little music from the house next door. So I walked on up to the doorstep, through the screen and across the floor. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. Sweet days of summer, the jasmine's in bloom. July is dressed up and playing her tune. I come home from a hard day's work, and you're waiting there, my cat in the world. See the smile waiting in the kitchen, who's cooking in the plates for two. Feel arms that reach out to hold me in the evening when the day is through. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my
And there we have it. As always, the link to this video is going to be in the description below, so you guys can check it out there. So watching it all the way through, I was tempted to jump in at about 2 minutes and 20 seconds because there is such a great example of both Jim and Dash, and we've got Jim Seals and Dash Crofts here. The way that they're singing the same note on pitch so precisely, and with this performance you will be drawn into the harmonization that's going on throughout the performance, but just as difficult, if not more difficult, is singing the exact same note so that both of the voices blend into one, which is exactly what we had. And you can rewind that back to 2 minutes and 20. We have got that stripped back sound, but you're going to get that because it's just Jim and Dash. We have got some bass in there that might be hard to pick out on your phones and your tablets, but if you've got a sub, then you can whop that up because there's some great bass playing going on as well, and it really adds to the fullness of the sound. But it's amazing as well, going back to the original record, how much is on that original record with piano in there and so many other instruments and a drummer, of course, as well. But then when you watch this live performance, at no point are you missing those other instruments. So it just speaks volumes for Jim and Dash's performance of just two guys, a mandolin, a guitar, and just a bassist in the background. On the original recording, the focal point are the voices, and it's exactly the same here. And even when you do go back to that original record, you can listen to the vocal sound because it is very dry for a record. Normally they would add a lot of reverb on there, considering that we're talking about the early 70s here. 1972 this song was released, and this performance is 1973. So having the similar sound to the studio, obviously playing and singing at the same time. And just to point out the little line that we've got, the melody on the mandolin that's being played by Dash here, it's something that, if you're familiar with the Isley Brothers, their version of this song, which, interestingly, only came out a couple of years after this, so it was relatively new on the scene anyway as a song, and I'm sure that a lot of people here in the UK think that this is an Isley Brothers song because it was on an advert as well. I can't remember what that was for, but that distorted guitar that is so high in the mix on the Isley Brothers version, we've got that melody, and when it's being played on the mandolin here, because the melody is so strong in that lead line, is precisely why the Isley Brothers A, didn't change it, and B, made it really prominent in the mix because it is so strong. Referencing that original record, there is a lead guitar sound in there that is quite prominent in the mix, and it's got a fair deal of distortion on there. So you can see where the Isley Brothers went with it, and that was Ernie that was playing the lead on their version. This is the great thing about when you've got a song that's just layered with great melody. When you start to highlight particular sections of it, you can't really go wrong with it because it's so strong originally. Also, the way that Jim changes between picking and strumming in order to fill in as much of that sound as possible, especially underneath that mandolin lead line that we have from Dash. But there are so many techniques and things that are thrown in here. For example, hitting the body of the guitar in the intro, just adding that percussive element in order to keep everything moving along. It isn't done throughout the performance, but just in very select sections. I've mentioned the accuracy vocally in this performance, but putting the pitch under the spotlight, because with this composition we go through such a dramatic lift into the chorus. For the verses, we're around B3 pitch-wise, and you can find that on your keyboard, on your pianos, or if you do play the guitar, it's your open B string. So that's where the verse is centered around. As soon as we get into the chorus, we have a dramatic jump up to E4, which is your open E string. And bear in mind as well that the harmony line that comes in from Dash is actually a G4. So we have such a dramatic lift. I've just busted out the guitar to give you a demonstration of the verse progression and the chorus as well, and how they differ and why they sound different. Because with our verse, when we're in E, the progression goes to an A minor 7th at the end, which is a really important part. So that's what takes the end of the line to a slightly different place, and it gives you a question at the end. I'll play through that again. So we're starting on the E. And this is the A minor 7th. That's the chord that's asking the question at the end. So when we want to transition into the chorus, we're holding on E a little bit longer. And the first chord of our chorus is now the A minor 7th, which means that we're not going to be ending the chorus in the same place. We're now starting it there. So there won't be that question at the end, and it won't take it to that slightly sadder place. So the way that we progress, if you want to know the chords in the chorus, A minor 7th, B minor 7th, A minor 7th again, but now in the bar chord, 5th fret. And then we have this little rundown. and that is G. So we've ended on a G major chord. It's a little rundown, but that's the underlying key and the chord at the end. So it means that we've resolved in a major chord at the end of the chorus, which means that rather than going to a sadder place and asking a question, we're now resolved and we're in a happy place because it's a major chord. Just taking that point a little bit further, I mentioned about that dramatic change in pitch that the vocals go through into the chorus, but just as important are the notes that are being sung. We've just found out that we're resolving in G. So when we start to analyze the notes that are being sung, we've got just they are the notes of the G major scale, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do scale, if you're singing along. So it means that all of the notes that we're singing in the chorus are in the key and are the scale of where we resolve. So it means that when we get to that place, everything makes sense because all of the melody is leading up to that point. And this is why it's so cleverly put together, composed, because at the end of the chorus you get a definite full stop rather than a question mark that we get in the verse. And just quickly, a couple of things to point out from a guitar playing perspective. The little run that we have in G, and what happens here, Jim only strikes the top part of his G chord, and then we have this little run. It's such a cool little run to throw in there, and it just complements the mandolin so well. But also that change up to the B minor 7th that the chord is, going from the A minor 7th, we've got this jump. And a lot of people who start to play the guitar and struggle with changing chords don't realize that you're never changing chord on the beat. For example, going and then trying to jump up a fraction of a second or in a fraction of a second to make that first beat of the bar. There's always these strums between the changes. So all of that, if I'll slow that down, all of those hitting those open strings, it is the secret to changing chords smoothly and not losing all of the sound between your chord changes, just hitting those open strings. And that goes across the board. If I do in slow motion the progression from the verse, and now in slow motion, so all of those strings that ring out in between, it is an essential part, like I said, to get your chord changes just sounding good. Once you add into the equation, you've got all of this cool stuff going on from that chord progression point of view, but then add in the quality of the lead vocal, the harmony vocals as well, and you're onto a winner. And there's so much melody in there that is so strong, not only from that lead guitar and lead mandolin point of view, but also, like I said, some of that picking that's going on. I'm not going to have too much time to get into the story behind these two guys. I'll do my best to fit in a little bit of information because Dash was playing in a local band and the same area that Jim played, and they eventually joined the same band, and they were in the Champs, and this was a band in the late 50s and early 60s that also had Glenn Campbell in and Jerry Cole. And for a time as well, Jim toured with Eddie Cochran and played in his band. Interestingly, in the early 60s, 1963, is when Glenn and Jerry and Dash and Jim broke away to start their own band, and that's called Glenn Campbell and the GCs, and that lasted for a couple of years. And once that finished, Then Jim and Dash joined the Dawnbreakers, and unfortunately that didn't go how they were hoping, so they broke away from that and started doing their own thing as a duo. In 1969 they signed with the record division of Talent Associates, and they recorded a couple of EPs, and off the back of that they signed to Warner Brothers Records, and their first album that they released in 1971 unfortunately didn't chart, but their second album in 1972 was the opposite, because that was Summer Breeze, and it got to number 7 in the charts and sold over 1 million copies. In 1973, they released Diamond Girl, and that was a massively popular album, and the title track was just as popular. It got to number 6 in the charts, and then We Never Pass This Way Again, that got to number 21 in the charts, and their album in 1974, Unborn Child, that went gold, even though it was a little bit controversial because it was about abortion and them voicing their views on it. So, because of that, some radio stations didn't play it at all, and some radio stations had it on repeat constantly. In 1974, they played at the California Jam Festival, and that was in front of 200,000 people, so it got them a lot of exposure because a lot of the current day bands and artists that were popular at the time played at that festival. And in 1975, they released I'll Play For You, and that was another massively successful album, and the title track did really well as well. It got to number 18 in the charts, and then the year after that, 1976, is when they released Get Closer, and again the title track from that album did really well, and it got to number 6 in the charts. In 1978 they released Taking It Easy, and in 1980 was The Longest Road, and unfortunately that was when they got dropped by the record label and they went their own separate ways, stopped making music until 1991, where they reunited for a year, and in 2004 they then got back together for the Traces album. Jim teamed up with his brother Dan from the year 2000 until 2008. Unfortunately, Dan passed away in 2009. But there is Seals and Crofts 2 now, which is the next generation, and this is Brady Seals, who's the cousin of Jim, and also Dash's daughter, who is Lua Crofts, and they were out playing at the beginning of the year, but obviously because of coronavirus at the moment, everything's on hold with playing live, but hopefully in the future, if you do want to catch a little bit of Seals and Crofts, you'll be able to hear some of that catalogue from Brady and Lua. But it's great to have a look back at this performance and being so stripped back, but those vocals so spot on, and so much cool guitar work and mandolin work going on here as well. Thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!